Your doctor told you to watch your diet. Your cardiologist gave you a list of foods to avoid. Your urologist handed you a pamphlet and told you to come back in 6 months. And not one of them mentioned the 3 foods sitting in your grocery store right now that could be doing more damage to your prostate than anything else you're eating. Or, more accurately, the 3 foods most men over 55 are completely ignoring that might be the only thing standing between waking up 4 times a night to use the bathroom and actually sleeping straight through until morning. Between that constant pressure you feel down there that you've started to accept as just getting older and actually feeling like yourself again. I'm Dr. Natalia Parker, and I'm going to explain this clearly. Because here's what nobody in that doctor's office ever connects for you. The food on your plate right now is either quietly protecting your prostate or quietly destroying it. And most men have no idea which one is happening. Let me start with something your doctor probably told you. He said, eat less red meat, watch your saturated fat, maybe take a statin. Standard advice. You've heard it before. But here's the part he left out. That general dietary advice was never designed with your prostate in mind. It was designed to protect your heart. And while your heart and your prostate are both important, they don't respond the same way to the same foods. What calms inflammation around your cardiovascular system can actually miss the specific tissue your prostate needs most. And the foods that specifically nourish prostate tissue, protect urinary function, and support the hormonal balance that keeps you feeling like a man, not just a patient, those foods are almost never mentioned. And the reason they're not mentioned is simple. They're not a pill. They're not a procedure. Nobody bills insurance for telling you to eat tomatoes a specific way. Nobody makes a copay off recommending a particular type of fat. So the information gets left on the table, and you go home with a prescription and a pamphlet and the exact same breakfast you had before. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men in their 50s and 60s are facing right now, even if they haven't connected the dots yet. The urinary urgency that wakes you up at night isn't random. The drop-in drive and energy that started a few years ago isn't just aging. That feeling of pressure or heaviness in your lower pelvis that comes and goes isn't something you imagined. These are your body sending you signals, clear, consistent, repeated signals that something specific is going wrong at the tissue level and that something specific is missing from what you're giving your body every single day. The question isn't whether these symptoms are real. They are. The question is whether you understand what's actually causing them. And here's the part that's going to change everything you thought you knew. It's not about eating less. It's not about some extreme elimination diet. It's about 3 specific foods that work on 3 separate biological mechanisms your prostate depends on to function normally. And once I explain what those mechanisms actually are, you're going to understand why skipping any one of these foods isn't just a missed opportunity. It's actively making the problem worse. But before I get to the first food, I need you to understand something about how prostate tissue actually breaks down, because this is the part that most men don't find out until they're already in trouble. Your prostate isn't just sitting there passively, it's active tissue. It's constantly under a form of low-level biological stress that most men don't even know exists. Oxidative damage, hormonal fluctuation, microscopic inflammation that doesn't cause obvious pain, but compounds day after day and year after year. And the thing about that kind of damage is it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send you to the emergency room. It just quietly accumulates. Your urinary flow gets a little slower. Recovery after intimacy takes a little longer. You wake up once at 2 a.m. instead of sleeping through, then twice, then 3 times. And by the time you're sitting in that urologist's office, years of invisible damage have already been done. That's the danger window. The years between when the damage starts and when the symptoms become impossible to ignore. And most men waste that entire window because nobody told them what was happening or what to do about it. The first food is something you've probably been cooking wrong your entire life. And that distinction, the way it's prepared, is the difference between getting maximum prostate benefit and getting almost none. We're talking about tomatoes, but not a fresh slice on your sandwich, not a handful of cherry tomatoes tossed into a salad. That version gives you almost nothing compared to what I'm about to describe. Inside tomatoes is a compound called lycopene. You may have seen it referenced on supplements, you may have heard it mentioned in passing. But here's what the studies actually show that most people summarizing those studies leave out. Lycopene from raw tomatoes has very low bioavailability. Your body struggles to absorb it in that form. The lycopene molecule is locked inside the cell wall, and your digestive system can't fully break through it. But when you apply heat, when you cook that tomato, and specifically when you combine it with any healthy fat, the cell wall breaks down, the lycopene becomes radically more absorbable, and what reaches your bloodstream is now something your body can actually use. And where it goes is what matters for you specifically. Lycopene accumulates in the prostate at higher concentrations than almost any other tissue in the body. Your prostate essentially draws it in. Once it's there, it works as a powerful antioxidant, neutralizing the free radicals that drive oxidative damage and inflammation in prostate tissue. Study after study shows that men with higher lycopene levels in their prostate tissue have consistently lower levels of the kind of chronic inflammation that drives urinary symptoms and tissue breakdown. This isn't experimental. This is well-established nutritional science that somehow never made it into that pamphlet your urologist handed you. Cooked tomatoes combined with a healthy fat, ideally olive oil or butter, are one of the most direct dietary interventions available to any man trying to protect his prostate naturally. Comment below right now and tell me what state or country you're watching from, because I see men from everywhere dealing with exactly this and getting zero guidance on the basics. But here's where it gets more complicated. And this is the part most people get wrong when they hear about lycopene and run out to buy a supplement. The bioavailability problem doesn't just apply to how tomatoes are prepared. It applies to the entire system you're trying to support. Because your prostate isn't working in isolation. It's connected to your circulatory system, your hormonal balance, your pelvic floor muscle integrity, and your nerve function. And you can't just throw one compound at a multi-system problem and expect a complete result. Which brings me to the second food on this list. And this one is going to surprise you because you've probably been told it belongs in the category of things to eat less of. The second food is the egg. Specifically, the whole egg, not egg whites in a carton, not some processed egg substitute, the complete egg, yolk included, from a quality source. And before your instinct kicks in and you hear that old warning about cholesterol, I need you to actually stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I'm about to explain isn't an opinion. It's the result of decades of nutritional science that overturned the original cholesterol scare. The dietary cholesterol from eggs does not raise cardiovascular risk in healthy individuals the way the original 1970s research suggested. That position has been walked back by every major nutritional authority in the last 15 years. What the egg yolk actually contains is something your prostate tissue has a direct, documented need for. The yolk is the most concentrated source of dietary choline that exists in a common food. Choline is the raw material your body uses for a process called methylation. And if you've never heard of methylation, this is the part you need to write down, because this single biological process may explain more of what you're experiencing right now than any diagnosis you've been given. Methylation is your body's internal cellular maintenance system. It repairs DNA damage before it can become something worse. It clears out used hormones, including estrogen metabolites that build up in prostate tissue and drive inflammation when they accumulate. It produces the neurotransmitters responsible for your focus, your mood, and your energy levels. When methylation is running efficiently, your prostate tissue is being maintained. Old damaged cells are being cleared. Hormone levels stay balanced. When methylation slows down, all of that backs up, and it backs up silently. The symptoms feel like aging. They feel like tiredness, like low drive, like brain fog, like bathroom trips at 3 a.m., but they're not just aging. They're a methylation slowdown that your diet could be directly supporting or directly undermining. The egg yolk also contains B12, folate, and fat-soluble antioxidants including lutein and zeaxanthin that many people only associate with eye health. But these same antioxidants travel through the bloodstream and incorporate themselves into the blood vessel walls that supply the prostate and the pelvic region. Once embedded there, they reduce the oxidative stress that degrades tissue over time. And there's one more thing about eggs that connects directly to a symptom you may have already noticed. If your urinary flow isn't as strong as it used to be, if you feel like you never fully empty, if your pelvic floor just doesn't feel as solid as it did 10 years ago, there's a nutritional explanation that has nothing to do with your prostate size. It has to do with muscle loss, specifically a loss of leucine, the amino acid that activates muscle protein synthesis. Without sufficient leucine in your diet, your body literally does not get the biological signal to rebuild and maintain muscle, including the pelvic floor muscles that support your prostate, control your bladder, and maintain structural integrity throughout the region. Eggs are one of the most leucine-dense, bioavailable protein sources in existence. The protein in an egg is absorbed at nearly 100% efficiency. No other common food comes close to that number. And that efficiency matters because the pelvic floor muscles are just like any other muscle. They respond to the quality of what you feed them. Now, I want to check in with you before I get to the third food, because the third one is the most counterintuitive of all three, and it's the one men consistently underestimate. But first, I need to explain something about what's happening in the background of all of this. Something that connects all three foods into a unified biological picture instead of just a list of things to eat. The common thread running through prostate dysfunction, urinary problems, low drive, and energy collapse in men over 55 is something called systemic inflammation, not the kind of inflammation you feel after a sprained ankle, the invisible kind. The kind that has no obvious source and no obvious symptoms but runs like a slow fever through your cells constantly. Chronic low-grade inflammation is now understood to be the root driver behind the majority of age-related deterioration in men. It degrades prostate tissue. It impairs blood vessel dilation, which is the exact mechanism required for normal sexual function. It disrupts hormonal signaling, specifically the conversion and balance of testosterone and estrogen, and it accelerates cellular aging in every tissue it touches. The three foods on this list work because they all, through different pathways, directly address this underlying inflammatory environment. Cooked tomatoes and lycopene reduce oxidative inflammation in prostate tissue specifically. Eggs and their constellation of nutrients support methylation and tissue repair. And the third food works on the inflammatory pathway through a mechanism that is completely different from the first two, which is exactly why all three together are more powerful than any one of them alone. If this is resonating with you and you want to take this further, there is a medical guide to avoiding the mistakes that damage the prostate after 60 available in the pinned comment below this video. It was put together specifically for men navigating exactly what we're discussing right now, and it goes deeper into the dietary, hormonal, and lifestyle factors that most doctors simply don't cover in a standard appointment. The link is pinned right below. It's free. Take it. The third food is garlic. And before you dismiss this because it sounds too simple or too old, stay with me, because the mechanism here is specific and it's real. Raw or lightly cooked garlic contains a compound called allicin that activates when the garlic is crushed or chopped and then exposed briefly to air. Allicin has been studied extensively for its effect on inflammation, specifically on the inflammatory signals called cytokines that drive tissue damage in chronic conditions. But for prostate health specifically, the most important thing allicin does is support nitric oxide production in the blood vessel walls. You may have heard about nitric oxide in the context of cardiovascular health or performance, but nitric oxide isn't just about your heart. It's the molecule your blood vessels use to dilate, to open up and allow blood to flow where it needs to go. And nowhere is healthy blood flow more directly related to quality of life in men over 55 than in the pelvic region. Insufficient nitric oxide production is one of the primary physiological mechanisms behind both urinary obstruction and difficulty with sexual performance. When the blood vessels that supply the prostate and pelvic floor can't dilate properly, tissue doesn't get the oxygen and nutrients it needs. Waste products accumulate, inflammation increases, function declines. Garlic, specifically allicin from properly prepared garlic, directly stimulates the endothelial cells lining blood vessels to produce more nitric oxide. This isn't a small effect. Clinical research on garlic and vascular function shows measurable improvements in circulation in men with compromised vascular tone. And because the pelvic region depends on vascular tone for almost every function that matters to a man in his 50s and 60s, this is not a minor or optional addition to your diet. It's one of the most targeted dietary interventions available. Here's how to prepare it correctly, because this matters more than most people realize. Crush 2 fresh cloves and let them sit for 10 minutes before cooking. That resting window is when the allicin actually forms. Skip it and you miss most of the benefit. Crush, rest, then cook briefly or add raw. That's the protocol. Now, let me bring all 3 of these together, because taken individually, they're each powerful in different ways. But the reason I'm presenting them as a trio is because they address different layers of the same underlying problem. Cooked tomatoes with healthy fat deliver lycopene directly to prostate tissue, where it neutralizes the oxidative stress that drives cellular breakdown and inflammation. Whole eggs deliver choline, leucine, B12, and folate that support methylation, pelvic floor muscle integrity, hormonal balance, and cellular repair. Garlic, prepared correctly, supports nitric oxide production and blood vessel dilation throughout the pelvic region, improving circulation, reducing vascular inflammation, and supporting the physiological functions most closely connected to urinary flow and sexual health. Together, they create a nutritional environment where your body has the raw materials to maintain, repair, and protect the tissue that's currently under attack. Not theoretically, not eventually. Within weeks of consistent daily use, most men begin noticing changes in urinary urgency, sleep quality, energy levels, and overall pelvic comfort. Let me be direct about timing, because unrealistic expectations lead to abandonment, and abandonment means the damage continues unchecked. These are not pharmaceutical interventions. They don't work overnight. Your body has been accumulating the damage driving these symptoms for years, possibly decades. 3 foods, no matter how precisely targeted, cannot reverse years of tissue breakdown in a week. What they can do, what the research and clinical evidence consistently shows, is begin shifting the biological environment in the right direction within 2 to 4 weeks of consistent daily consumption. Some men notice improvements in sleep within the first 2 weeks, specifically fewer nighttime bathroom interruptions. Others find urinary flow gradually strengthens over the course of a month. Energy and drive often follow, not dramatically, not like a pill, but meaningfully. The kind of change you notice when you realize you haven't thought about your bladder all afternoon, or when you wake up and realize it's morning. The men who get results are the ones who understand that this isn't a supplement protocol or a 2-week detox. It's a dietary shift, a fundamental change in what you consistently give your body to work with. And here's the honest part. Your prostate doesn't care about your schedule. It doesn't care that it's inconvenient to remember to crush garlic 10 minutes before cooking. It doesn't care that you've been avoiding yolks for 30 years based on advice that's been overturned. It only responds to what you consistently deliver to it. Every day you continue giving it the wrong environment is another day of continued damage. Every day you give it the right environment is a day of potential recovery. There's one more thing I want to address before I finish, because it comes up constantly when men first hear this information. They ask, what about supplements? Can I just take lycopene and choline and allicin in capsule form and skip the dietary changes? And the answer is nuanced, but important. Supplements can provide these compounds, and in some cases, they're useful bridging tools. But supplements are not food. They don't come with the synergistic cofactors that make the compound bioavailable. Lycopene from a capsule doesn't arrive in your body the way lycopene from cooked tomatoes does, because it doesn't have the fat, the heat-modified cell matrix, or the other compounds that tomatoes provide alongside the lycopene. Choline from a pill doesn't come with leucine, B12, folate, and fat-soluble antioxidants the way a whole egg does. The food matrix matters. The whole is more than the sum of its parts. Use supplements if you have to. But don't use them as a replacement for the dietary foundation, because the food matrix delivers synergistic cofactors that isolated capsules never fully replicate. Here's where you are right now. You came into this video knowing you had some symptoms. Maybe you dismissed them. Maybe you've been managing around them. Now you understand the biological mechanism behind those symptoms at a level most men never get. Not from their doctor, not from a pamphlet, not from a generic health article online. You understand why lycopene specifically, delivered in the right form, accumulates in prostate tissue. You understand why methylation, driven by the nutrients in a whole egg, is connected to everything from hormonal balance to pelvic floor function to the brain fog that's been slowing you down. You understand why nitric oxide production, supported by properly prepared garlic, is directly linked to the urinary flow and physical performance symptoms that have been quietly getting worse. And you understand that this isn't one problem with one solution. It's a layered biological situation that requires a layered dietary response. 3 foods, 3 mechanisms, 1 integrated system that has been asking for this support for years. The question now isn't whether this works. The research is clear. The clinical experience backs it up. The question is whether you're going to treat this as information you'll think about later, or as a clear and immediate directive to make a change starting with your next meal. Because the difference between those 2 responses isn't just about whether you feel better in 3 weeks, it's about what your prostate environment looks like in 3 months, 6 months, 5 years. The men who take this seriously in their 50s are the ones who maintain function and quality of life into their 70s and beyond. The men who wait are the ones sitting in that urologist's office being handed another prescription. You're not broken. You haven't missed your window, but you are running out of time where this is easy rather than hard. Every year of continued inflammation without the right nutritional support is tissue damage that takes longer to reverse. If this helped you understand what's actually happening inside your body, subscribe to this channel because this is exactly what we do here. We explain what most doctors don't have time to cover in a 15-minute appointment. We give you the mechanism, not just the recommendation. We give you the why behind the what, so you can make decisions that actually make sense for your body and your life. Not because we're telling you what to eat, because we're showing you what the science says and trusting you to act on it.